The big yellow bus rumbled down the winding road, taking passengers to their destinations. In the last seat by the window sat a married couple. The man, James, was in his early 30s, his short cropped hair giving him a neat and athletic appearance. Sitting next to him was his wife, Emily, a shapely and soft woman who looked out the window with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They were traveling to visit James's mother-in-law, Margaret, and Emily couldn't help but feel nervous. Despite her reserved demeanor, Emily's upbringing had instilled in her a deep sense of duty to her husband. She decided to lighten the mood and engage James in conversation. "Look at those apple trees, James," Emily said, pointing to the lush orchard that stretched along the road. "This is the beginning of my mother's property. She has the largest orchard in the county. The apples are so delicious this time of year. By the way, it's just about harvest season. Maybe you could help us out." James gave her an incredulous look. "Emily, do I look like I'm built for manual labor?" "Look at these arms," he said, kneading his biceps theatrically. "I don't carry baskets of apples." Emily giggled softly. "Of course you do, dear. It wouldn't occur to me to ask you to exert yourself. But maybe you could climb a tree and pass the apples." James frowned, clearly unimpressed. "Don't be silly. What if I fall? Let's just leave the hard work to someone else." Emily quickly apologized, but she managed to distract James from his brooding thoughts for a moment. As the bus pulled up to a picturesque stop shaded by thick vineyards, Margaret came into view, waiting for them with a warm smile. James' irritation vanished when his gaze fell on her. Margaret, an elegant woman in her 50s, was impeccably dressed in a tight evening gown that emphasized her slender figure and long legs in black stockings. Her radiant presence was hard to miss. Margaret greeted them warmly, hugging James tightly and kissing him gently on the cheeks. Emily stood back, feeling overshadowed by her mother's commanding presence. "James, you're getting prettier every time I see you," Margaret said with a twinkle in her eyes. "Fitness training must be keeping you in great shape. Maybe you could give me some lessons while you're here." "Mom, James came here to rest," Emily interjected, trying to shield her husband from possible commitment. But James was already elsewhere, envisioning Margaret in her workout gear, carrying out his every instruction. He smiled and brushed off Emily's concern. "Don't worry, Emily. I'll be happy to help Margaret stay in shape." "Well, let's not stand around all day doing nothing," Margaret said. "Let's go home. James must be tired from traveling and needs a good meal." Emily and Margaret each picked up a heavy suitcase and, struggling to manage its weight, headed toward the house. James, meanwhile, walked leisurely behind them, whistling and chewing on a blade of grass. His gaze lingered on the women ahead, their figures swaying with the effort of carrying their luggage. Margaret proudly introduced James to the neighbors as her favorite son-in-law as they passed by. Her brick house, large and attractive, stood surrounded by neatly trimmed gardens and fruit trees. Inside, she had prepared 2 rooms, a shared bedroom for James and Emily, and a separate attic sanctuary for James. The attic was equipped with the latest technology: air conditioning, a large TV, a game console, and even a minibar so James could relax in comfort. Margaret wasted no time and set up a feast in the garden gazebo. The table groaned under the weight of homemade dishes, with the golden roast pig taking center stage. James sat down at the table and devoured the food, while Emily and Margaret watched in silence. Margaret's meticulous work would have elicited endless gratitude from most men, but James only thanked her briefly before returning to his meal. After eating, James laid down in the hammock to rest, leaving Emily and Margaret to change into their work clothes and begin picking apples. Margaret couldn't help but notice James watching her as she moved gracefully through the orchard, illuminated by the morning sun. To distract herself, she decided to send Emily to get fresh milk from a farmer 5 kilometers away, while she herself was left alone with James. As soon as Emily was out of sight, James approached Margaret with a confident smile. "Why don't we start a fitness class right now?" he suggested. Margaret hesitated for a moment, but finally agreed. James led her to a shady area under an apple tree and began demonstrating the exercises. He guided her through stretches and movements, his hands occasionally touching her skin. Margaret felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years. James' experience and attention renewed a sense of vitality in her. As the session progressed, James' hands moved more boldly, massaging her legs and offering adjustments. Margaret's initial surprise was replaced by trust, and she found herself enjoying the experience. They moved to the soft grass, where James continued to perform the exercises, The atmosphere between them became increasingly intimate, but Margaret felt a new energy and confidence under his guidance. By the time Emily returned with the milk, Margaret was glowing. She thanked James for the lesson, and her gratitude was sincere. James, too, felt satisfied and was already planning the next day's business. The upcoming warm fall days promised to bring new experiences, laughter, and unexpected connections for all involved.